Well, hello everybody. Jeff Cowan here from Jeff Cowan's Pro Talk, and I'm back with a brand new edition of my podcast entitled Right Service, Write Your Own Paycheck, the path to making over $100,000 a year when writing service in the automotive industry. And at this very recording, just over 20% of you are doing just that, making $100,000 a year or more. But that means that nearly 80% of you are not doing that. So how do you solve that? How do you get in the $100,000 a year club? Well, you watch this podcast. Go back and watch all my other podcasts that I've recorded. And by doing so, you're going to find all the tools, techniques, processes, and things you need to put yourself in that $100,000 a year club. Now, there's also something else you can do. You can also invest in yourself by investing in my training. Buy my books, buy my online training. Have me come to your store. Come to one of my workshops. I'll put you there if you want to get there. It's very, very, very easy to do. What I'm going to do with this podcast is what I've done with the last few, and that is I'm going to stick to answering questions that you've written in and asked. Now, in this category that we're going to cover today, because we're going to cover one category, I'm going to assign this question to Luther from Oregon, but I got dozens and dozens, probably more like hundreds and hundreds of you wrote in and asked pretty much the same thing. But here's what Luther from Oregon, and by the way, hi Luther, wrote in and asked. I've noticed my closing ratio has slipped recently, and I don't know why. Do you have any thoughts on why that may be? Well, Luther, I do, and what I can do is I can answer this question by answering it by giving you what I've seen happen so many times to many, many service advisors out there when they see their closing ratio slip. Now, I just want to say this before I even get into it. It's not uncommon, no matter what type of selling you're in, from time to time to see your closing ratio slip. And you can easily solve it in any industry by doing what I'm getting ready to recommend. Okay, the first thing is I want to ask you, Luther, and the many people that wrote in and asked that same question is, do you know enough closes? Do you know enough closes? You know, one of my favorite books I've ever read, it's a book written by Zig Ziglar. And that book was copyrighted probably 30 years ago, but it's as effective today as the first day he put it out. The name of the book is called The 100 Secrets to Closing the Sale. 100 Secrets to Closing the Sale. If you've not read that or listened to that on audio, you need to track that book down. It is powerful. Now, in that book, Zig Ziglar says that any closer needs to know at least 100 different ways to ask for the money before they ever step out on anywhere in front of customers with their paycheck on the line. 100 different closes. Tom Hopkins, another favorite author of mine, wrote the best all-time selling book on the topic of closing called How to Master the Art of Selling Anything. Tom Hopkins, How to Master the Art of Selling Anything. And in that great book, #1 seller, Tom says you need to know at least 50 closes before you ever step in front of a customer with your paycheck on the line. And once you master those first 50 closes, you need to add another 2 or 3 closes, or you need to add a close every 2 or 3 days until you have a couple of hundred ways to ask for the money. Now, what I recommend people do when they're hiring a brand new service advisor or they're just getting into the field themselves as an advisor, I recommend before you ever step on a service drive that you have at least 20 different ways to ask for the money, 20 closes, and then every 2 or 3 days, add another close or 2 until you get your arsenal up to about 100 to 200. Now, why does Zig, why does Tom, and why do I make this recommendation? Because, point number 2, you're going to find that closing is very personality and situation driven. So if you only know this many closes, you're only going to be that effective. But if you know this many closes, you're going to be that effective. So the more closes you know, the more effective you're going to be because, again, they're personality driven and they're situation driven. So knowing that, what is working today? So what type of situations, this is what you need to ask yourself, what type of personalities are you dealing with today and what type of situations are you finding yourself in? Because what you're going to find is what works today won't necessarily work tomorrow because people change. So for example, point number 4, what typically changes is the benefits the customer is looking for. So let's focus on that, the benefits the customer is looking for. For example, 24 months ago, you know, if I was on a service drive, the benefits that I'd be putting into my presentations would be benefits revolved around safety or maybe performance or maybe ride and comfort. Maybe one of those or all three of those, because 2.5 years ago, that's what people were focused on: safety, performance, and ride and comfort. But today, since COVID has hit, it's shifted everything. Today, since gas prices are as high as they are, and they're probably going to go up a little bit more, and they're going to hover around there until we get to this election, not to get political, but you're going to see these fuel prices drop once we get to election. But in the meantime, they're very, very high. So what are people into today? Okay, today when people come in, the benefits should be based around fuel. The benefits should, and efficiency. The benefits should be based on reliability, and the benefits should be based on protecting their investment. So let's take a look at each one of those. What do I mean? Why fuel? Well, with the average price of a gallon at this recording being about $5 across the country, more than twice what it was just 15, 16 months ago. I mean, that's very, very high. It's at record highs. So fuel efficiency is going to be very important to everybody walking onto your service drive. Now, I know if you're dealing with EVs, maybe the electric vehicles, maybe the concern isn't there because you're charging it. But right now, a very, very small percentage of cars being sold. I think last year it was 3%. This year expecting 4%. The number of people driving those is still relatively small. So well over 90% of the people that you're going to be dealing with are still driving gas-powered car. So I don't care what type of car they're driving, fuel is going to be important. It's going to be the number one thing. So what am I talking about in closing? Well, when it comes to talking about benefits, make your presentation, you need to lead off with things like this. Mr. Customer, after walking around your vehicle, I noticed a couple things that caught our attention, and I want to talk to you about them because I'm assuming you, like everybody else, and certainly me, noticing that the fuel prices and having to live with the fuel prices being over $5 a gallon, you're going to want your car to be as efficient as possible and be able to conserve as much energy as possible. That being the case, I'm going to recommend several things to you that you do to your vehicle, preventative maintenance, if you will, that's going to allow you to continue to experience the highest levels of fuel efficiency on your vehicle. I mean, that's the type of things you want to say. You want to hit that real hard because that's what everybody's thinking. Now, to even drive that home, just 3 days ago, and I don't like to put my own personal situations on it, but it proves what I'm talking about. Just a few days ago, I took my vehicle into the service center. And it was interesting because as I was standing there waiting for my advisor to approach me, I was listening to other customers as they were working with their advisors, and I heard at least 6 different people talking to their advisor, and 4 of them were talking about fuel efficiency and the price of fuel. It's the number one thing that they're after. Now, the other thing that I talked about that they're going to be concerned with is reliability. Now, reliability, what's interesting about this is as recently as December, reliability was the number one thing people were interested in because the fuel prices hadn't gotten as high as they were. Why was reliability important then, and why is it number 2 on the list right now? Because of COVID. When COVID first hit, it hit people like a ton of bricks. I think I said this a week or so ago in another podcast, but it's worth repeating here. When COVID first hit, it hit everybody, and even today, even though I don't think it's going to happen, it hit everybody that we were one news conference away from the government shutting down all public transportation. No airplanes, no buses, no trains, no Uber, no Lyft, no taxis. And it hit everybody that the only way they may be able to get around was in their vehicle. So if they wanted to get in line and fight for their toilet paper and their paper towels and their toothpaste and soap and all that stuff at the grocery store, they had to be able to get to the grocery store. They had to be able to get to the doctor if they had COVID symptoms. And the only way they may be able to get there in their mind was their car. So reliability was extremely important, and it still is today because as we hear on the news all the time, there's another variant of the COVID coming around, and every time there's another variant, they talk about possible closing, and that again hits people. I've got to have a car. So in that situation, you would say something along the lines of, Mr. Customer, in the time and age that we're living in, we never know exactly what's going to happen next. And what I'm talking about is COVID. Is it coming back? Is it not coming back? And if it comes back, are we going to have lockdowns? And if we have lockdowns, how far are they going to go? Are they going to shut down the airlines, the buses? They're going to shut down Uber, Lyft, and taxis? That's always something that we have to be concerned about, right? And so what we're realizing in living in today's world is that having a vehicle that's reliable, so we don't have to depend on the government. We don't have to depend on these public transportations. We can depend on ourselves. We have to make sure we have a car that's reliable. The reason I bring that up is because I just got through walking around your vehicle vehicle, and in doing so, I noticed a couple things that caught my attention, that if you were allow me to get those done today, it would ensure that your vehicle remains as reliable as the first day you drove it off the showroom floor. So that's the type of things you would say to address that benefit that they're interested in. And then I think the third most important benefit that is going on right now is protecting your investment, okay? Protecting your investment. So how do you protect your investment? You do preventative maintenance. Why is investment important to customers? Because they understand, again, what the importance and the level of importance that their vehicle plays in their lives right now. Now, the word investment is real interesting because prior to March of 2020, before COVID hit and they shut everything down, if you paid attention to your customers when they came in, they referred to preventative maintenance and repairs as necessary evil. What's it going to cost me? How much am I going to have to pay today, right? But since COVID has hit, if you listen to your customers, they switch from that mindset to they're saying things like, well, what's it going to take to protect my investment today? They're seeing their vehicle and therefore the repairs and the maintenance that it takes to keep these vehicles running as an investment. Okay, so again, if you pick up that that's the main benefit that somebody's interested in, you would say something like this: Mr. Customer, I can tell by the way you take care of your vehicle and the way you keep it clean and the way you keep it up and the past history of the way you've taken care of all the maintenance and repairs as they need to be done, that you're very concerned with continuing to protect your most important investment, your car. So today in walking around your vehicle, I noticed a few things that caught my attention that if you were allowing me to get those taken care of today, it would allow you to do and accomplish what you're trying to do at the end, which is protect your investment. And these type of things are just examples. All three of those probably sound very similar, but what wasn't similar was the benefit that I was talking about, and then the benefits I would have included further in the presentation. You can only say these things on the service drive and should say them on the service drive when you're face-to-face in the morning, but you also want to use them in the afternoon when you're making your callbacks after your factory-trained technician has done their inspection. You want to make sure you use those same type of terms. Now this is very small suggestions here. I mean, these are very quick. Literally here at Pro Talk, we've got a thing called a pocket guide. As a matter of fact, I have one right here. It's called a pocket guide. There's literally 90 different ways to ask for the money in that. We've got our workbooks. I mean, here's a copy of one of our workbooks that goes with our training right here. You know, the workbook, Winning in Service. That has over 20 closes on it, and on and on and on. And the reason we hit that so hard is the way I started out. Because closing sales is very personality and situational driven. So you have to be prepared for what you're dealing with. Now also in our training, we show you how to identify which benefit the customers could be most concerned in. And these three that I've given you, the fuel consumption, the efficiency, the reliability, and the investment, if you're handling the customers the way that we recommend, literally in the first 60 seconds, you would know which one of these three, or if it's all three that they're most concerned about, which would dictate to you how to talk to the customer, what words to use, what presentations to make, what benefits to include, and therefore what closes to use. So when it comes to closing ratio, you have to set the customer up first by making sure you're talking about what they're most interested in, and then it gets easier to ask for the money. Now I know that I didn't get into a lot of different closes here because that's, that in itself can go in many directions. And write in if you want me to start talking about various closes. I guess I could do some podcasts on that. But going back to your original question here, Luther, if your closing ratio has dropped off and it's slipped as you says it has, and that's happened to a lot of people, it's probably because you're using the same old closes you've used over and over, and they may have worked 6 months ago, 12 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, or whatever, and they're not working now. It's because your customer has shifted. They're shifted in what they're looking for, and more importantly, they're shifting in why they're looking for it. That's what, to me, is what makes closing and being in the profession of sales so exciting. It's not just going out there and talking to customers. It's not going out there and just making the same presentation over and over. It's going out there and figuring out, through building rapport and talking to your customer, who's in front of you, what type of personality they have, what benefits they're interested in, and by doing that, you can decipher very quickly which of the 100 plus closes that are going to be most likely to be most effective with this personality in this situation. That's what's going on there. So Luther, get yourself a good closing book. Pay attention to your customers. Try these tips that I've given you here today, again, by focusing on fuel economy, reliability, investment, and I'd be willing to bet you that your closing ratio is going to go through the roof, because you're not, even though you asked this question and several hundred other people asked the same question, we're out on service drives every day and we're seeing the same thing. We're seeing people just like you have had their closing ratios slip, and we've gone in, we've showed them in much more detail than I've shown you here how to switch that up and how to change it, and overnight their closing ratio jumped through the roof. And that's great too, this is worth noting about what we're talking here. Closing ratio isn't something that takes days and weeks and months to adjust. It literally can happen overnight by just taking to heart the suggestions that I've given you. And so before I go, I want to talk to you about one more thing, and that's what your closing ratio should be. But before I get into that, now this closing ratio is going to be extremely important, so make sure that you hang around to listen to this, because you're going to want to hear this, because you need to know what you should be shooting for, if you're going to measure your closing ratio as you should be. But before I talk about that, I want to talk to you about Pro Talk. As I've said in the last several podcasts, I just invested well over $200,000 in pretty close to 6 months of my life and my resources into updating our virtual training. I'm telling you, there's nothing like it in the marketplace. Nobody has better content. Nobody can present it better than I did. And the way that the content and the stuff that we're talking about in there, we're just knocking it out of the park. I mean, it's a 51-week program, online program. People are invested in it in record numbers, and they are raving about it. I mean, our numbers are through the roof on people signing up for this monthly subscription. Not only does it have that, but it has a quick start program for brand new service advisors. It has managers training on how to hold people accountable and get your people, showing them how to use this. It's got testing in it that you can see, we can see, and since we can see it, our virtual training manager, who's available to you every single day of the week, she can help you, coach you through that, as can our reps. And plus, it's got a section on there about closing. I also wanted to talk to you about our workshops. I'm doing a lot of private workshops right now. If you've got a convention, you've got a Dealer 20 meeting, or you have 20 people at your organization that you can put in a room and you want me to show up personally and do a workshop, nobody does a workshop better than I do. I mean, this is what I live for, to do these workshops. I love them. I take them very seriously, and I will get your people excited. I will get them trained, and I will get them bought into a process that will allow them to have the highest hours per repair order, biggest sales, biggest customer retention, perfect survey scores, no heat cases, all that stuff. We'll show you how to do it. The average person that we help out in those areas, man, we show them how to make an easy extra $50,000 to $100,000 a month like that. And then, of course, the thing that we're most famous for is our service trainers, our expert trainers. I've got the best in the business. They'll show up to your store, stand beside you and your service advisors as you're writing up customers, coaching, critiquing, role-playing, and even writing service with you to show you how to have your best service year ever. Because if you're not having your best service year ever, not a good one, not one of the better ones, but if you're not having your best service year ever, you're doing something wrong. We've got a customer out there that's never been easier to work with, never been easier to make happy, never been easier to get an upsell from. It's a great customer, and therefore you should be having your best service year ever. And if you're not, give us a call. We'll show you how to do that. And with the lack of car sales out there and the lack of new customers coming in, the lack of the warranty, the average shop is off by 40% in their warranty sales. You're going to need to maximize every opportunity with every customer that comes in your door. You call us, we'll show you how to do it. 1-800-248-2931, 1-800-248-2931. We will get you and your team lined up. So going back to what we're talking about here, closing ratio. Since you're asking about it, what should it be? Here's what it should be. It should be at least 80%. Okay, or 70%, I'm sorry, 70%, minimum 70%. Now, let me define what I mean. I'm not saying 7 out of 10 times you get part of a sell that you recommend to a customer. I'm telling you that 7 out of 10 times you get everything you ask for. 7 out of 10 times you get everything you ask for on your walk around. 7 out of 10 times you get everything that you ask for on the afternoon phone call. The entire sell. It should be a minimum of 70%. And it can be and should be as high as 90 to 95%. I can have you, if you call me, I can connect you with people that have closing ratios that are 90 to 95%. Okay, that's the minimum. Now, managers, I'm talking to you. You hire a brand new service advisor, and within 60 days, their closing ratios at least 70% on getting the entire sale. It probably never will be. Service advisors, you watching this? If you're brand new, if you've been on a service drive for 60 days. At least 60 days, and your closing ratio is not a minimum of 70%, you're doing something wrong. Now, If I get challenged on these numbers all the time, 70%, as high as 90, 95%, yes. Now here's the problem with it, but here's how at the same time, here's how easy it is to flush out. You go to your desk manager that's working in the dealership selling cars, you know, they do the most, and you tell them, hey, look, I just watched this podcast, and this guy on there said I should have a minimum closing ratio of 70%, and it could be as high as 90, 95%. Here's what here's what he or she is most likely to say to you. Are you kidding me? Where's this guy getting his information? What's he smoking? I mean, our best car salesperson out here who delivers 30 cars a month has a closing ratio of only 40%, and our average closing ratio is only 24%. That's the national average. Again, where's this guy getting his numbers? What's he smoking? Well, let me answer those questions. Number one, it's none of his business what I'm smoking. I didn't vote for it. I just moved here in California. When in Rome, right? But the real question is here, where do I get those numbers? What are they based on? Well, here's what they're based on. He's right. When it comes to selling car, the national average, according to the NADA, is only 24% closing ratio. Why? Because selling cars is different. It's based on hopes and dreams. You see, when somebody comes in, they're dreaming you have the right car. Prove to them you do, the dreaming quickly changes to hoping you have the right payment. Put those two things together, you'll sell a car. Happens 1 in 4 times. But when you're selling service, it has nothing to do with hopes and dreams. It's all based on pure need. I mean, think about it. How many times do you think a conversation like this has happened? You got a customer driving down the street in their brand new whatever, okay? Whatever. And it's only got 2,000 miles on it. It's a brand new car. And the guy's all excited about his brand new car. And he looks over at his wife and he says, honey, I don't know about you, but I can tell you, I know we're used to trading cars in every 3 to 4 or 5 years. But this car I'm going to have until the wheels fall off. I'm going to put 500 million miles on it, 500,000 miles. I'm never getting rid of it. What do you think? And she says, I'm glad you said that because I love this car too. I'm never getting rid of it. And the husband says, well, I'm glad you said that because even though it's brand new and it's only got 2,000 miles on it, I was reading this morning online where this manufacturer's created a brand new braking system that if you put it on any of their vehicles, retroactively back to the very first one that they built, if you put this new braking system on it, you'll never have to replace the brakes again. Now, it does cost $5,000, but you know, if we've decided we're going to keep this car, and even though it's brand new and only has 2,000 miles on it, I think since we're off today, we go by the dealership and buy the new braking system. What do you think, honey? Now, how many times do you think a conversation like that has happened? I won't even make you answer. I'm going to tell you. Never! You know how these customers come in. They come into you with their brakes squeaking, metal to metal, 1 foot out the door, Fred Flintstone in it, trying to stop the car before it goes through the back wall of your shop. So it's not a question whether or not they want to buy the product or not. They have to buy the product. The only question is, are they going to buy it from you? Are you prepared as a closer with enough closes to handle them? Are you aware of what closing really is? Do you understand how it's personality and situation driven? If you fully understand closing, you have 100 or more, you understand the personalities, you understand the situations, and you understand how to figure out those things, then there's absolutely no reason why your closing ratio shouldn't be a minimum of 70% and as high as 90, 95%, because again, it's not a question of whether or not they're going to buy this or not. It's not hopes or dreams. They have to buy it. The only question is, are you prepared? Are you a big enough closer? Are you strong enough at what you do? Are you committed enough to what you do to be prepared for this customer when they come in and close them while they're standing in front of you or talking to you on the phone? That's the only thing here. And the only way that's ever going to happen is if you make the time investment and the monetary investment, spending money on the training it's going to take to make you a superstar. You know, I start out these podcasts all the time talking about how at least 20% of the people are making $100,000 a year, and you guys write in all the time, it's going to happen this time. Jeff, you don't understand, I live in a small town in Indiana, or I live in a great big city out in California, or I live here, I live there, whatever. It makes no difference. It's the same car. It's the same car made by the same manufacturer coming out of the same factory. They're just shipped all over the country. There might be some slight differences, like I've said, in how you might take care of a car in Maine with all that snow and cold weather versus Arizona with no snow and all that heat. There might be some slight differences, but basically it's the same car, the same needs, and I can put you on the phone with literally hundreds of people that live in all kinds of towns, working for all kinds of manufacturers and all kinds of stores, old, new, small, and big ones, whatever, that are making that money. It's not where you work, it's not the brand, it's you. How prepared are you? How committed to you are you to this job? And like I've said dozens of times before, it takes no more time on a service drive to make $70,000 a year or $60,000 a year as it does to make $100,000, $120,000, $150,000 a year. What's the difference? You and your commitment. You and your commitment to your business, you and your as an owner, you and your commitment as to your team as a leader, and you and your commitment to yourself as a service advisor. So Luther, I hope I answered this question for you. If you just got to pay attention to what you're doing and pay attention to your customers, and be aware that the way people you handle them are going to change from time to time as they change and the environment they're in changes, and that's all you're seeing now. The environment has changed. So with that, this is Jeff Cowan here. I certainly appreciate you listening to this or watching this podcast, however you're doing it. I invite you to come back next week because I'm going to have another one that's just great and you're going to love it. But in the meantime, I'm going to encourage you to do this. Go out and make it a great week and close as many sales as you can, because between now and next time when I do my next podcast, that is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it a great week and I'm going to close as many sales as I can. So with that, signing off here, Jeff Cowan from Jeff Cowan's Pro Talk. God bless you. I will see you soon.